we are going to discuss, the title of this is called, it's the most exciting title ever, Monetizing Mobile, Transferring Behavior into Bottom Line Results. That's really dull headline. I should have called it Trump, 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 but not really. But in any case, we're going to talk about monetizing mobile. This is a great panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to have a discussion on where mobile monetization is going, some of the trends that are happening, including in AR and VR, some of the countries that are doing a better job, entrepreneurs in other countries are doing a better job than our companies here, and sort of where it's going. Because it's been one of the big issues is that mobile does not monetize as well as the old internet does, so everybody's having issues around not making money, despite high valuations of a lot of these companies that are very popular. So first, let's start on my left. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Spencer Rascoff. I'm the CEO of Zillow Group. We are a mobile company. About 2/3 of our usage is mobile. We have 24 apps across 5 different brands, and we monetize very well on mobile. So I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Hi, I'm Jenny Lee, GGV Capital. I'm a VC investing in both US and China, managed $3.8 billion. Seen the growth of very interesting business model coming from China, in particular mobile as well. So I'd love to share that with everybody later.
Mostly mobile.
Mostly mobile. Mobile monetized way better than PC internet in China.
I'm Carolyn Everson, and I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions for Facebook, also Instagram as well, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Oculus.
On this side?
I'm Andrew Appel. I'm the CEO of IRI. We've been monetizing data for 35 years, mostly the purchase data from retailers, and I think over the last couple years have been working to link those purchase data sets with mobile and media data sets to try and create the ecosystem of ad exposure to purchase.
Hi, Sam Yagan. Until recently, I was the CEO of Match Group. I'm now the Vice Chairman of Match Group, and over the last 12 years have been in the online dating category and basically been part of the transition of that business from desktop to mobile and the monetization implications. I also am a venture capitalist and sit on some boards of some mobile companies.
And the companies at Match are Match.
Sorry. Match, OkCupid, Tinder, Plenty of Fish of greatest consequence for this conversation.
Right, absolutely. So let's talk, I don't like to show slides, I hate slides, but let's talk about the mobile opportunity right now and where it is, because it's something people have been talking about for a while now. Web 3.0 is mobile, it's been a while, and yet the monetization still has lagged, the monetization solutions have lagged, and it's very hard to look at companies and say there are huge successes in it, although there are a few. Uber being one of them, probably, in terms of being able to use a platform so well and use a transactional thing. So let's talk about where we are. Why don't we start with you, Carolyn, because Facebook is sort of the Google of this decade, essentially.
Well, from our perspective, mobile is the most transformative consumer behavior we have ever seen. And every 15 years, there's something incredibly transformative, right? It was PCs, then it was internet, and now it's mobile. We think actually the next one will likely be virtual reality.
Well, you did spend all that money on Oculus. So it has to be, right?
We are betting on it as the next operating system. But from a mobile perspective, Facebook was a desktop company when Mark started it, and we had to completely pivot the company in a matter of weeks when more consumers came on to Facebook on mobile instead of desktop. We had 0 revenue in mobile. Our capabilities in mobile were not very good at all 4 years ago, and Mark really led a very significant pivot in the company. Today, fast forward 2016, we just reported last week, 82% of our revenue is now mobile. And we think it's not only the most transformative consumer behavior. From our perspective, we're seeing a very big divide of traditional companies, we'll call them the A's and B's, that might be in single digit or flat growth, sometimes negative growth, or trying to rewire and transform themselves to be mobile first. And we see these disruptors coming into the market, 1,000 apps a day being submitted to iOS and Android that are completely mobile based. And from our perspective, it's very measurable, driving significant business results, and mobile is probably the single best thing that happened to Facebook's business.
Right. You are a mobile company. You're
without question.
Desktop at this point. I mean, even despite the fact that you had a sort of detour into trying to make a phone, which was a disaster, correct? Would you?
We had a detour at one point, but we are absolutely by far and away considering ourselves not only mobile first, but we try to be mobile best in everything that we do. Instagram was another example where we acquired Instagram. It was a mobile app. We have made significant investments in the messaging category, WhatsApp being a $19 billion acquisition and pulling Messenger out, which now has 900 million people. So between those four, depending on the country, ex-China, we typically have anywhere from 2 to the top 4 apps in every market around the world.
Right, so Facebook's strategy has been to own all the major must-have apps versus a phone, which is sort of like their HBO, they own HBO, ESPN, et cetera, everything else.
Well, out of 3.1 million apps, consumers have on average about 27 on their phone that they utilize on a monthly basis, right? A banking, a travel, a weather, so on and so forth. But 75% of their time is in 4. So for us, the opportunity is how do we get to be the top of mind in at least 1 out of 4 or 4 out of 4, depending on the country.
Right, okay. So let's talk about real estate, another area that started on the desktop.
Yeah, I mean, the story of what's happened over the last 10 years is companies that either made this migration from desktop to mobile or didn't.
Give me one who didn't.
eHarmony. I mean, you know what you guys did to eHarmony.
I didn't even pay him to say that.
No, it's true. I mean, they were the Web 1.0 leader on the desktop, and now they've been eclipsed by Match,
right.
And by Match Group, by the whole family. There are a lot of the failure of MySpace and Friendster and other kind of Web 1.0 social networks there are lots of reasons why, but the mobile migration certainly didn't help. And I mean, Facebook is to be credited. When Facebook went public, they had never run a single ad on mobile. I don't think zero mobile
revenue.
I mean, which is just unfathomable. It's extraordinary. It's such an incredible success story. I mean, even putting aside WhatsApp and Instagram, 2 of the greatest acquisitions ever, what Facebook managed to do in terms of migrating their users and then building out ad units and then monetizing it by selling to companies like us. I mean, we're a huge Facebook advertiser on mobile. I'm sure you are too. Is just absolutely extraordinary. And so there have been some companies that have succeeded. We succeeded because the use case is there. People want to shop for real estate when they're mobile. When you're driving around looking at homes is when you want real estate information in your hand. And the ad unit works. So for us, the ad unit is seeing a couple different real estate agents to choose from and click to call. And so the ad unit works better on mobile than it does on desktop. So the combination of those two, of great user experience and then great monetization,
Talking
is why
about
we've
immediate
succeeded on mobile.
satisfaction, the idea of you're somewhere you're doing your real estate porn thing, which I like to do every Saturday.
Thank you. We thank you for it.
And you're using it and want something immediately.
Yes.
To be looking at.
And when you're driving around or walking around a neighborhood, you can access real estate information, see what people paid for their home, see what's for sale, see how long things have been on the market, see Zestimates or home valuations, and then you see ads for real estate agents. And in particular, you can click to call a real estate agent. So it works well in commerce, in certain commerce categories. You mentioned Uber, obviously. It works really well in media, in certain media categories. Facebook has incredible data, and that's why we spend so much money buying media from Facebook to drive Zillow users. Zillow works really well, not just because of data, but because of the ability to click to call a real estate agent.
Do you ever imagine a time when you're talking about commerce that there'd be a click to buy or a click to deposit or a click to
buy a house, maybe to sign a lease on a rental, but no, I think home buying is still too complicated and infrequent that it will always have a pretty significant human element to it.
Okay, so let's talk about IRI. Now you've been monetizing data for 30 years?
Yep.
How do you do it now?
A bunch of different ways. I mean, the core of the monetization is we get the data from a source, right? Historically, a retailer. Mm-hmm. We aggregate the data. Kroger, Walgreens, CVS, we aggregate the data, and then we provide a platform and insights back to the retailers themselves and the product companies. Mm-hmm. So that's and it's been a booming business, and effectively it was kind of data monetization before before the internet. Mm-hmm. And now I think back to the conversation of mobile, I think the challenge that everybody's having is how do you then link online and offline behavior together? So how do I link the mobile ads and all the mobile behavior that's going on in the social and all the different platforms back to the ultimate thing you're trying to do, which is to get a consumer to change their behavior to buy a product or shop at a store. And so that's the next monetization platform for us, and I think for many of the companies that have unique information on consumer behavior on either on their device or in their app, or even to the next one will be context and GPS, right? How do I take that information of all the things you're doing, where you are, what you're doing, and how do I link it to did it actually change my purchase behavior or my likelihood to purchase?
Well, that's been the great hope, correct? Is that you're walking around and it suddenly starts giving you coupons and come in here. And I mean, it's sort of like the refrigerator that orders your milk, which
You
never
got
seems
it.
to happen.
No, well, the challenge is that it's about being able to pull the data sets together in a way that link back to the individual. And
So give me an example of that.
I'm walking down the street and I've got a history of purchase for Walgreens. I am on Facebook and I'm looking at my Zillow app. And
So you get hit by a car.
if
But go ahead. So you're dead.
So, you know, today what happens is if you're lucky, you walk in the Walgreens and you get a coupon for something somebody else bought, 3 months ago. In other words, there's a tiny bit of context, there's a little bit of scoring. But you could imagine if I could somehow know that I was on Facebook at that time, that I have a propensity to be a mobile user, by doing that, and I'm maybe having a discussion, or I've seen 3 ads for Pepsi or for Walgreens at that time, that I'd have a propensity to want to shop there, and then I got my Walgreens app and I would get a triggered alert or something. Today those worlds are silos, right? What we're trying to do is bring those two, like the media mobile world together with the physical distribution world. Mm-hmm. And we're pretty close to doing it. We've got all the data sets in place. The idea is to fuse effectively the mobile behavior to the sales platforms.
To what they have been buying, which is increasingly on mobile using Apple Pay or Android, whatever.
Well, 98.6% of many grocery stuff is still bought in the store.
Right.
And apparel. So even with mobile buying and Amazon, you still have 90+% of purchases done in a physical store. You also have these retailers that are kind of worried about the e-commerce revolution, and they're waking up and saying, gee, at the end of the day, we know more about the consumer than Amazon does, because these people have been shopping in our stores for 10 years. We got to figure out how to take that information and then link it to Facebook and Google and WhatsApps and TV advertising and credit card and other data sets.
If they continue to shop in the stores, I think that's a trend that's going to go away. 96% perhaps, but it's not.
Well, but the reason I think, yes, I mean, you could say that they're dead and then they should give up, but I think, the reason people move offline is for convenience and for speed and for ease of purchase and for the quality of the experience and stuff like that. Amazon provides a very high quality experience. Your typical retailer does not provide a very high quality experience. It's not a very personalized experience. So the trick if you're a retailer is, how do I use the same information, the same context, the same capabilities that an online player can do to create that experience with the consumer? And I have some advantages if I own a store, right? Because you're physically in my location fairly often, right? I mean, as connected as I am, because I'm to Amazon, I am not physically, I have a 2-dimensional relationship with my e-commerce player. I have a 3-dimensional relationship with a retailer. So if they can get this stuff right, they do have some inherent advantages.
Potentially. We can talk more about that later. I feel like if you visit San Francisco anytime now, I've called it, I've dubbed it assisted living for millennials, because it's all delivery. Everything is delivery. Commerce is done on mobile.
Yeah, no, that's
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Press the button.
And it's getting quicker and quicker and quicker. That's the conversation we have with the retail. Speed's compressing, time's compressing, and you got to catch up.
Exactly. All right, so Sam, dating has been one of the biggest, most monetizable assets of people wanting to meet people or whatever they want to do on Tinder. We all know what they want to do.
Meet people?
Yeah, meet people. Don't shake your head. It's your business. Be proud of it. Put your head up. That's what you do.
They meet people.
You meet people. Okay. That's a new term for it. Talk about that, because that's been one of the first, besides car sharing services, that's been the first real use. You think
People
it's funny?
sharing.
First real use of mobile in a way that is monetizable.
Yeah, so when I think about where mobile can be transformative in the monetization sector, I think where is mobile simply more than just more convenient than desktop? and when is the business model not just a transition of the business model from desktop. And so Uber's probably the best example where Uber as a desktop app just doesn't work, and it allows for a new kind of transaction that wasn't taking place
Yes,
before.
computers are heavy.
I know, exactly. And if you think about dating, I think what it really comes down to is people focus on the front end side of dating, the searching and whether it's swiping or searching, but really dating is primarily a messaging application at the end of the day, right? Once you find the person, then it's all about messaging, and that component of it is what you're doing all day, and that's what I think been super powerful for all of our dating businesses. And then of course what Tinder really unlocked is just like real estate, dating is one of those apps that requires you to fundamentally be at the same place at the same time with another person, or in your case with a home. And I think that's what made it so powerful, is it allowed for that moment that there's someone right around the corner that you could meet, and then there's all kinds of monetization implications that come from that.
So, but you don't charge. You haven't charged. Sometimes you charge for premium services, correct?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Tinder and OkCupid, all of our products have a premium component to it.
But let me just add
so
one
just-
small little point to this, right? To create the connection, right? You've got Tinder, you've got location-based meeting, and if you're a restaurant and you know people are meeting and they're communicating, there's a chance to monetize that information to create, another ad exposure and ad opportunity, right? You got context, and there's all sorts of things you could do to market to those people if done in the right way, that you could actually monetize that data.
Sure, absolutely. So Jenny, one of the biggest areas for mobile monetization has been in China. Way ahead of everybody, WeChat, all the Tencent, all of them have been doing things that they don't do here. And most of the phone companies that are most powerful are here in this country, between Apple and Google, essentially, as the two systems. And there are some players in China, but really most of the power of mobile is here, and yet all the really innovative stuff in mobile has been going on there. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening in China and why it's different from here?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at China from a monetization perspective, China internet population moved from a very PC-based to mobile-based. So 10 years ago, when we have this conversation, there may be 50 million online PC users. Today, when we're thinking about China, we have 600 million smartphone users, and this is smartphone users in China alone. And what's unique, mobile versus PC, is number one, in PC, when we think about users, it's traffic. It's how much page views, how much video views, and by and large, the model that's applicable there tend to be more advertising-based, where we are directing the traffic out to the vendors, to the service providers. But in mobile, what has fundamentally changed is that, number one, this is very specific user data. We're talking about daily active users, monthly active users, down to the 600 million users, and whether it's the 4 apps or the 27 apps, it's all about the data. And then number two, which is very important, is payment. So very early on in China, thanks to Alibaba, Alipay, and Tencent in the form of Tenpay, the mobile users are actually equipped to pay. Very similar to what Apple Pay has in the US. But if you think about Apple Pay, it's only been a very recent phenomenon in the last 2 years.
And many aren't using it.
Absolutely. And in China, if you think about it, 70% of the online users in China has an Alipay account, which means that you can transact. And because of that, the monetization means that we have seen in mobile in China has been extremely varied. And I'll cite a couple of examples. I'll give you guys some examples as well. Maybe ideas to think about as you think about monetization. So in mobile, the first wave of monetization was, as we know, number one, downloads. Because when you have 600 million users, you need apps. And so the App Store starts to make money. And by the way, in China, other than Apple Store, there's no Google Play. So the Android market in China, you can actually get access to hundreds of kind of App Store download. First generation monetization was through download of content. Second monetization was through consumption of content, which I think is very similar to the US, meaning you download a game, you're playing the game, you're buying a book, right? The second monetization. And then the third monetization, again, thanks to e-commerce. E-commerce in China is 15% of all commerce, relative to about 7% in the US. And so the big population that's coming online in China are actually buying physical products. And then thirdly, the fourth business model that we have seen is what we call the O2O, so offline to online, online to offline, which is represented in the form of, say, the Uber services, the delivery services. This is prolific as well because the Chinese population, they are extremely lazy. They prefer to stay at home. versus fighting the traffic, Beijing traffic going from one place to the other takes you 2 hours. And so I'd rather have my masseuse come to my home, my food delivered to my home, and my water delivered. And so the fourth monetization is really you can click to transact a service, and this service doesn't have to be a physical product. It could be a person coming to massage your feet, right? And then the fifth one, which is very interesting, is what we call U2U, user to user. I think most people don't call it that way, but this is how we'll coin it. So user to user, basically, we are leveraging mobile now as a way to tie in direct user interaction. I'll cite an example. We have a portfolio company that's monetizing directly from users and in what we call a fan-based economy. This is a listed company in the US. Essentially, the company has a huge technology platform that enables real-time communication, whether it's video, audio, where you can now, so for example, this conference can be held online where folks are interacting directly real-time through a PC app, to your mobile app. And so instead of charging the companies using the service as a utility tool, the way the company charges is this. So for example, if as a VC, I can give a course or talk about venture capital terms, and I may have 100 users. The 100 users come online and think that I'm a great speaker, and so they don't pay me for the cost, but they can give me a thumbs up, or they can give me virtual flowers. So think about a concert. If I'm singing today and you guys love my songs, you may be sending me virtual flowers. In some cases, you may want to send me a virtual BMW, which is going to cost you like 10,000 RMB online. And for that amount, the platform takes 50% of the cut, and me as a performer takes the other 50%. So on an app like that, you do not see advertising. I may have 100 users or 1 million users in a single stream, and I'm going to get the fan-based virtual items payment, and I'm going to split 50-50. So think about what this means, right? So if you are a farmer in a tier 3 city, and all you know is how do you farm, what's the best way to farm, today you can actually go online, open up a channel, show the world how you can farm better, and if you have fans who thinks you're doing a great job, they're going to give you and reward you with virtual currencies as well. And it's
Which have real world currency.
Absolutely. You actually get paid 50%. So in this U2U model, you actually bypass the entire agency in the middle. You don't need an agent. So in the case of real estate, for real estate businesses in China, we can actually transact on mobile. Think about me wanting to rent a place. Today I can go onto the site in a single click, look at a specific location, a specific block, and in that information, I can get real-time video. So for example, the real estate person representing the real estate could actually do a walkthrough real-time. And I may be in a different city, going to move to Beijing, for example. I can see real-time how this room is going to look like. And I can talk to the person real-time as well. And basically, in the same 30 minutes window, I can actually say, OK, I'm going to rent this place for 2 months, for example. So transaction is happening very well in the real estate model as well. It's not just a lead gen model, but it's actually a direct transaction. In the matchmaking world as well, so this company that I mentioned that does virtual currencies, it's a company called YY. They actually have online matchmaking. And their online matchmaking is not about finding just, we call it friends discovery in China. Try to discover a friend, which is a big killer app. And so in that application, what they do is that in China, there's a very popular TV program where you have 5 guys and then 1 woman. And the woman gets to interview the 5 guys on TV and then choose the guy that she wants to go out. That's the dating game, right? Okay. So this company brought this whole dating program from TV onto online, where you can now have over millions of users at the same time in real-time video. Not only that, so while you're trying to do online discovery and matching, you have fans. So the fans are actually watching this program just like you would watch a TV program. And the fans are like, oh, this woman is great, right? She's asking the right question among the 5 audience or the 5 men. And well, if obviously objective is to find a friend. And if you don't find a friend, you can still make money if you're a good, performer online. So that's another way where monetization is happening, not just for this
just gives you an idea of how much stuff is, because none of this stuff is going on in the US. There are still gatekeepers, pretty much. It's more of a gatekeeping society. You have Facebook doing it, or Zillow, or your companies, and not where this is person-to-person kind of thing.
The technology is here, so if you guys can leverage this, love to bring a Chinese company here for collaboration.
Some of those things are starting to percolate. I mean, online video tours, for example, is happening. To me, the most interesting part of the Chinese and American difference is the existence of WeChat as a platform, which Facebook is really trying to recreate, or not recreate, but create here in the U.S. And there was a lot of debate around if it's going to end up working the same way here as it does there. But I mean, I think one of the reasons why some of these innovations haven't happened in the U.S. is here anyway. It's really a Google or Apple ecosystem, and so there are two tax collectors. There are that are controlling these two huge mobile platforms. Now you have huge mobile platforms too, but they're not really Google. They're not Google or Apple, right?
That's right. So for example, Baidu, right? Baidu, #1 search engine in China, started on the PC side, and in mobile, they are trying to help the O2O players through their maps. So mobile maps obviously is the #1 application when you're trying to get around in China. And so instead of Baidu saying, I'm going to do all O2O, they are actually trying to enable merchants to open up stores and have a listing on their map. So that, as you as a user is looking for a restaurant, you can actually get access to coupons and stuff and basically navigate to find the place. So the bigger platforms in China are trying to both be complementary to the ecosystem. Obviously, they are going to still be a gatekeeper in the form of, say, payment, right? The end transactions, or in the form of Xiaomi, a hardware phone, right? To try and capture that data. But the market is big, and so the roles have actually been pretty complementary to startups as well.
So talking about that, we have Apple and Google, who are not on this panel, but they're exactly that. They're the tax collector.
Right.
Essentially, they control a lot of these platforms. Talk about that as Facebook, because Facebook is not a shrinking violet. It's one of the most successful companies in the world. Increasing power around video. Facebook video has taken off like crazy. But it's largely an advertising platform still, although there's been all kinds of efforts in commerce, some of which have worked, most of which haven't worked as well. Talk a little bit about where that's going. I mean, do you look at that as part of your role?
So from our perspective, we would even look at what we've done within commerce and call it in the very big umbrella of the big capital M for marketing. And so everything that we are building, be it on Facebook, Instagram, and now increasingly we're working through Messenger and very much looking at WeChat and trying to understand what behavior is going to translate, is all about building products and solutions that drive our clients' business. And so that's really the pivot we made. We not only made the pivot to become a mobile company, but from a monetization standpoint, instead of just building things and putting them out there and say, okay, sales team, go sell them, we have, I think, tried very hard to become a listening organization to say, what are the biggest challenges? It could be to acquire new customers. It could be re-engagement. It could be translating online to offline conversions. We try to understand all different verticals, what are the client's business challenges, and how do we build products and solutions around that. That's the approach to the business, and that really, I think, has been an evolution for Facebook over the last handful of years.
More specifically, what could they do in the monetization area? Because she's mentioned 10 different things that could happen, all of which Facebook is perfectly capable of.
Well, it's interesting already what's happening on our Facebook platform. For example, in Indonesia, we are the largest e-commerce platform. We haven't tried to become the largest e-commerce platform. We frankly haven't built even the right tools to be the largest e-commerce platform, but local people in Indonesia have decided to utilize Facebook newsfeed and Facebook groups to actually buy and sell products. And we're having that occur. People are doing that on WhatsApp in different markets. And so what we're seeing is generally people want to have a closer connection to businesses. That behavior that you see in WeChat, that actually is behavior we're now seeing in all Western cultures. The number of messages between people and businesses has more than doubled on Facebook in the last 6 months, which is an indication to us that consumers feel as though they should be able to communicate with any business, small to large, to either ask customer service questions, to buy products, to order more products, get information. And so that's really the thing that we think about, but we put that all under the umbrella of marketing, not a diversification of revenue streams. Because what we do believe is that generally marketing needs to become more efficient. I think CMOs are under more scrutiny around what they're spending and how they're spending, and we believe everything that they are spending should be driven to an absolute business result, which is why we're obsessed with measurement. We want everything to be measured.
I can give an example from our experience with Facebook, which, I mean, it ties to the dream that you mentioned about, you're walking past a Walgreens and you get a coupon. I'm waiting for that day. I feel like we've been talking about that for a long time, that traditional retailers have sort of had that promise for a long time. Facebook already has a product which is pretty similar. I mean, we send Facebook hundreds of thousands of email addresses of people that meet certain criteria. For example, people that have visited Zillow in the last month but didn't contact a real estate agent and did save a home. Okay, so those are people that are clearly serious shoppers, likely to want to talk to a real estate agent, and we are now just buying Zillow ads on those people's Facebook pages. So incredibly targeted. I mean, as you said, you think of it in terms of marketing, right? And our money has, not all of it, but a lot of it has moved out of Google, out of SEM, where we could traditionally buy, this is music to your ears, right? Where you could traditionally buy things like, Los Angeles homes for sale and then drive clicks, but in a much less targeted way. But now we can buy them on an email address specific Facebook page.
And then,
But see, they're a perfect example of a mobile-centric company where they actually live and breathe around what data are you collecting, right? Whether it be on Zillow or truly any of the properties, and then how do you utilize a mobile platform to drive business? They're the disruptors, right? They're the X, Ys, and Zs that have built up a mobile-centric capability and see the power of finding consumers in the discovery mode on a platform that they're spending a significant amount of time. And the behavior has drastically changed from desktop was dominated by search behavior. We all would go in and type a question, look for information. That is not the behavior necessarily that's happening in mobile. Mobile is much more about serendipitous discovery, but the consumer expects it to be super relevant. So we would, if I got something, which I have in the past as we're looking for different properties, I expect Zillow to know that this is the area that I am looking for, these are the types of homes, and that's how Zillow should show up. That's the expectation that consumers have.
what happens then in data? Search is not the paradigm, because I agree with this idea of, I thought Google was a Neanderthal. The idea of typing in a box seems to be like in 20 years we'll laugh, like how we used to use payphones. But how does that change the search paradigm then? When you're thinking about it, because Google's made all this money through search, and they're trying in mobile very hard. They created an entire phone system in order to make search not die.
Look, I think it ultimately comes down to where the consumer is, and are you presenting them with context-relevant information that is giving them what they need at that time, right? So if Google search can be context-related and actually give you, if it could do the same thing, right? If it could identify the people based on where they are and their recency behavior and provide you with the same level of accuracy of presenting the information, and then the same level of throughput back to you as to whether you actually had the person on Zillow do something. One of the challenges of Google is they have a different view about return path. And so it's much more difficult when you work with them, from what I understand, to get the return path. And so how do I close the loop if I'm Zillow and I'm paying for ever more targeted search if I can't actually get the return path data? Whereas in Facebook, you have an inherent advantage. You know where the person is. You have an immense amount of information on it. And you have created, from what I understand, kind of an ecosystem that allows return path, right? The difference is ultimately, if you're going to be consumer-centric, we need to, what I would say to my clients is we need the Facebooks and the Googles and the Twitters and to be open, right? Because how can I provide that personalized capability? So the reason some of these things don't happen, right, that the dream of a context-related coupon is because there's a lot of challenges. There's walled access to that information. Yeah. So, and so I don't even have the ability to get individual exposure data from Google or Facebook to match with my coupon data, right? The media side and the retailer execution promotion side are siloed right now. And our goal is to kind of work with the retail ecosystem to work upstream to basically bring those two together.
So Sam, you all started, it was a very Google-oriented world, where you were, and even in dating and stuff, search was the way you look at it. How does that change now when you're thinking about monetizing these mobile experiences and also giving customers, because they come back to your app if they find it useful?
Sorry, so what's the second part of the monetization?
So what happens in that, but what do you see happening in that environment?
I think and this is actually a question that I would actually put back to you, Spencer, which is like the example that you gave is actually of the email addresses is actually one that seems very desktop oriented to me. Like I didn't get a sense of what was particularly mobile about that. And so the way I think that answers your question is there's actually, I think, very few things that are actually relevant to the mobile part of monetizing mobile. Like a lot of the things we do think to be totally, maybe climactic here, is a lot of the same stuff we did before, where we're just doing it a little bit more conveniently. Yeah, we're using a little bit different data set, but fundamentally, I think other than making the product better for the consumer, when I think about what things do we monetize on mobile that we don't monetize on desktop, that's a very small set of things. I'm curious.
Well, the usage behavior is just so different. I mean,
Well, no, of
in that
course.
example, we're trying to drive a mobile download of the Zillow app from Facebook. So you're using Facebook on mobile. You're going to see an ad for Zillow. You click, it takes you to the App Store. You download the Zillow app, and then we track what do you do once you've downloaded the Zillow
Sure.
app. So, and all of the data around usage and engagement rates and time on site and et cetera are just so much better for app users than for mobile web users who just tend to bounce. So, so that's why we're so.
But that really
that's why
is
we
a
try
story
to
of having
get
better.
downloads.
But that's really the story of having higher qualified customers, because
Yes.
you've gone through the process.
Well,
of
and a better experience. Just it's better, a much better experience inside an app than mobile web.
Sure, but I think that can be pretty easily explained by the fact that somebody who takes the trouble to download an app is just a higher qualified customer, right? Largely.
Yeah, but particularly in GPS, the
It might
GPS
cause them to do
function
more.
in the mobile browser just doesn't work very well.
It
So
also
you know.
causes them to use it more.
Yes, so
Just
it's a
choice.
combination. Yeah, it's
Sure.
it's a little self-selection, but then it's also that the experience is better.
Oh, what is it? What's unique about mobile, and maybe it isn't realized in these examples, is it's context related, right? It's where you're actually doing something at that moment that's related to the purchase or the behavior you want to do, right? And desktop, a lot of what you do is something you're going to do, right? You're searching for information that you're going to do. So the promise of mobile is I know where you are, I know your context, and if I can use those things to create much more personalized experiences as a company that wants to build a relationship with you, the promise is huge, right? And it is, as people aggregate all their behavior through their mobile device and do more and more, it also introduces a concept of time, which doesn't tend to live in most of the modeling that's done for measurement, right? We use static measurements. It's rare that we look at the sequence of events, right? Someone saw a TV ad, was on Facebook, received an ad, and then got a promotion, and that little pocket of people ended up, buying 6 times more of XYZ than somebody who only did one of those. I mean, that's impossible to know today, but it can be very powerful, right?
But Kara, I don't even think it's even the promise. It's here, right? The consumer has shifted. They're spending more time on mobile than they are.
All their time.
We're now, we may be having a US-centric conversation, but go to some of these other markets. I know you've been bringing us and talking about China, but you go to some of the other markets, they're not even going to have a desktop experience. It's going directly to mobile. Right. And mobile has overtaken essentially all traditional media in every market. So it is where consumers are. That's the power of serving up on their mobile device, which they're checking. Average consumers now will check their phone well over 100 times a day. It's so instinctual, it's like blinking our eyes.
Yeah.
You can't even keep track of how often we're picking this up. So from a business standpoint, the power of being able to reach consumers on the most personal device they've ever had, that's with them all the time, it's incredible.
I would agree with that. I have a 14-year-old who's going to marry his iPhone. And Snapchat has to be there, but let's talk a little bit about that, Snapchat and things like that, because that has been one of the more successful mobile devices, and they are beginning to understand monetization around it. Now, I know Facebook did try to buy it at some point. You don't have to say yes. Mark already told me he did. And probably regretfully didn't grab onto it. This guy really wants to build out the next generation platform. I'm going to use them as an example, but there's an example of something that is so natively mobile, completely engaged audience that uses it, obsessive almost. How do you look at something like that? If you were suddenly made the head of monetization at Snapchat, what would you do?
Look, I think Snapchat has tapped into the zeitgeist of particularly younger audiences who are using it mostly for a messaging service.
Communications.
Yes,
100%.
back and forth communications in a very raw, authentic way. And we actually think the ecosystem is stronger with multiple apps. So we want Snapchat to be successful. We want Twitter to be successful. We think that's actually a positive thing because all it does is prove that the shift to mobile is happening and businesses need to pay attention to it.
Twitter's a whole different case. They're in a much more leaky boat, but all right.
We'd like them all to be successful.
All right, okay. Well, then you should buy Twitter. Go ahead.
I'll share that with Mark. from our perspective, one of the products that we just launched was live video. And what's so interesting about live video, this really wasn't even in our product roadmap 6 months ago. And it was done with a very small test, and we started to see how much people loved this raw, authentic ability to go live at any given moment to a community of one or everyone that's in your...
It started at Periscope.
It did. It started with others, but on Facebook, it is the fastest growing consumer product we've ever had, 10x more engagement. So there is something in the zeitgeist of consumers wanting this raw, authentic communication, and live does that incredibly well.
I was going to move on to video because that's one of the things.
Yes.
Live is a perfect example of that. It's, we started off with Periscope and using, what's the other one?
Meerkat.
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 Yeah,
Yep.
Meerkat. The other one. Yesterday's, Friday's best video.
So the live chat is actually a huge application in China right now.
Yeah.
It started over a year ago in mobile live chat, and there's an example of this company that's actually grown from 0 to 2 million daily active users in less than 6 months. And with 2 million active users, their users are paying $3.50, so 20 RMB per day for the active user per day. So these are users that, as I was talking about, the user-to-user engagement, the users are actually paying to watch someone doing live chat and live broadcasting, and they are actually buying $3.50 a day.
It's fascinating. I experiment with all of them,
Yes.
and I did my lunch the other day, and I got 10,000 people watch me lunch.
It's unbelievable how much people love it.
Do you get virtual currencies?
No,
No.
nobody's giving me BMW.
So if you do this in China, you'll be making like
I'm
1,000
going
a
to do it
minute.
in China. I'm going to do it in China.
And you
But
can
it's
do it
interesting.
straight away.
It's fascinating.
What
So
were you eating?
What? Down at the Embarcadero.
I don't know.
Well,
Maybe it was something special.
It's
The
sushi
broadcast
burrito.
cable companies.
10,000 people.
I mean, and the cable companies.
Oh, I could do
TV
anything
networks
and I
should
get
be terrified by
10,000
this.
Well, we have
Yeah.
celebrities
Yeah,
that are
they're all
getting
studying.
more people watching them in live video than they
Yeah.
are on any of
Yeah.
their network
Totally.
TV shows. So look, video, we're talking about mobile here. What we would say is video is more transformative than mobile, which is like a shocking statement.
Mobile video.
Mobile video, yes, so it is mobile, but video, every time we estimate it, we continue to underestimate it. It is not only a beloved format for consumers, but certainly for marketers that have told their stories through sight, sound, and motion. But what I would say where we are in mobile video from a marketing perspective is like 1955. We have just started television advertising, and people are just figuring out that a radio ad is different than the TV ad. We are now, we've got a lot of marketers that take 30-second spots and just put them into the mobile feed environment, and we're working with them to understand that it's a different behavior. Those first few seconds need to be thumb-stopping content. You need to think about sound off. You need to think about bringing the brand up. I was just at a movie studio earlier this morning where, and the way you would roll out a trailer is very different than you do on a mobile feed. And the power of the data, back to Spencer's point, I mean, we can now get mobile video targeted in such an incredible way. We're going to eliminate a lot of waste. We're going to add a lot of reach and frequency. That is going to be very valuable. It's going to be very significant.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little about mobile video, because I do think two things before we go, and then we'll get to some questions in a minute. Virtual reality and augmented reality.
Yes. Game of Thrones, most popular 360 video in 24-hour period. So we think virtual reality, when we talk about it in the public, feels like Oculus, right? Put on the goggles and transport ourselves somewhere. And that is here, and it is going to be transformative and amazing. But there's also a step to virtual reality, which is 360 immersive videos, which now over 200 marketers have done on Facebook. Star Wars was the first, where you literally felt like just by tilting your smartphone, you were having an immersive experience.
Right. So talk about that in each of these, what happens in those environments, because it really is. It's quite astonishing what's happening in that space and what you can do and what people have. The creativity is really off the charts as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we used to think we would remember Star Trek, we would thought that in the future we would teleport our physical selves and land somewhere. It actually turns out that likely we're going to teleport bits of another world into our world and virtually experience them. And so It is going to change every industry. You're going to start with, think about, I'll do real estate. Not only will you be able to see videos, but we will literally be able to, if I was trying to look at a home and my husband and I were not physically in the same location, we could virtually do a tour of the home. I could virtually show my mom and dad the home if they weren't with us. Travel, you're going to be able to feel like you are anywhere around the world. It'll transform education. We already have doctors that are using virtual reality and Oculus to train themselves on highly sophisticated procedures. Aircraft maintenance. I mean, I could go down every industry.
You left out porn, but okay. Let's go to real estate.
You brought up real estate porn, so I thought we were covered on that.
Yeah, I mean,
whole
it's
different thing.
so it's definitely happening. I think the only question for me is it going to be virtual reality or augmented reality that's going to sort of win the day? Because while
I assume most of you know the difference.
So virtual reality, you're putting on a mask and you're there's no multitasking. You're totally immersed, right?
Yeah.
And
People
augmented
laugh
reality.
at you when you're doing it.
Augmented reality is like Google Glasses is sort of the prototypical example where you're still here in reality, but you have some information kind of overlaid on top of your real life. Virtual reality is pretty contrarian. I mean, it kind of flies in the face of everything about society is moving towards multitasking, and now we're saying no, actually people are going to be totally immersed, and so. I'm a little skeptical. We'll see. I'm not one to, as you can tell, I'm not one to bet against Facebook based on my comments. But I certainly in gaming and other places where you want to be totally immersed, virtual reality is going to be phenomenal, or medical training, for example. But I do think that I think that we might find that the use cases for virtual reality where you're totally immersed are going to be smaller than augmented reality, which could become bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in China, the excitement is actually around AR, augmented reality. When you think about industrial robots, when you think about, with the healthcare, when you go down to the enterprises, that's where AR can actually help to balance out the cost equation and help to semi-automate or fully automate the back-end plants. I think on the VR basis, there are a lot of gamers, 80 million MMO gamers or multi-user gamers in China alone, and so it will be a very great market in terms of monetization. But can you extend VR basically into other areas like education, medical in a more monetizable manner? I think that's the question that we're struggling with.
So talk about dating here, and you started OkCupid. This is like perfect, right?
Which, virtual or augmented?
Both. All of the
No,
above.
I don't want to. Then you'll get into porn again.
No.
AR.
No, but dating, not porn
No,
necessarily.
the virtual reality aspect.
No, not at all, because you could meet people in a
Friends
virtual.
discovery.
Right. You can.
Friends discovery.
I think
And voting on it.
absolutely AR. I think you could imagine. I mean, Sean has talked about at Tinder. His goal is you walk into a bar and you start. The easiest way to figure out who around you want to talk to is actually pulling out Tinder and swiping through everyone because everyone else is on Tinder. You could imagine an AR scenario where you walk into a bar and you don't even have to do that, right? And everything is just surfaced for you.
Right. Today that's called stalking, but go ahead.
But
Go ahead.
but not if it's reciprocal.
Not if you're using Tinder. No, then
Right.
it's just
If you want your
independent.
information out there.
That's right. And I think so. I think that's huge. And then I think that married in with the data. I mean, I think knowing where you are and where the surface of people that you've been messaging with is, I think that's all super powerful. So I think AR more than VR, because I think VR is good if you, again, to Carolyn's point, if you want to sort of be in this alternate place. But I think most people who are dating are trying to go on a date, which is a very basic thing to say. And I think in that place, AR is much stronger than VR.
So that's interesting because most people consider, I don't, but most people consider Google Glass a failure. I think it's a device failure and not a conceptual failure. Its device was what the problem was is you were reacting to the device versus the device reacting to you. And the opposite is Amazon's Echo. It reacts to you constantly, and so it's successful. It's successful and you're happy with the device. And Google Glass never really, besides being difficult to use, was restrictive in a lot of ways.
And there weren't enough apps for it either. So
well, true, but let's talk about what was the problem with it and what has to be solved with it, because it is a big opportunity for every one of these businesses, especially including making money. I remember when the original Google Glass came out, I was on a Google X party on the San Francisco Bay, and they all had Google Glass. This was just before everyone got them, so it was kind of cool to see, but everybody was wearing them. and they all started talking to their Google Glass, and then they started sending off other people's Google Glass. So they kept saying, okay, Google, Google this, and then it would set off this, and they're like, no, no, stop, and then it would do kind of things. And so it was this horrible vision of the
robots running
future
into the
that I had, like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Like, it couldn't be worse. And so I went over to their giant shrimp table, because Google always has a giant shrimp table, and just sat there and ate shrimp and watched the entire thing and took notes for my book later.
Put the glasses on the shrimp.
Yeah, no, I didn't have glasses. I thought they were awful. But what could happen in this area? What could occur to make it useful?
Well, it was.
And what are the monetization possibilities?
Oh my gosh! Here's where you're going to tell us that China's 20 years ahead
Yeah.
and already figured it out. Well, I mean, it was too expensive. The launch strategy was to give it to technorati and celebrities to make it seem exclusive, and then there were no apps for it. So it was like a combination of problems that contributed to it.
It's also an unattractive.
Yeah, and the form factor was a little.
I always said it
little
made
odd.
supermodels, undateable. But I used another word. But go ahead.
But what could serve to make it work? Well, it could be at a really low price point and have a lot of apps, and then be a really successful platform. And whether it's Google or Facebook or Facebook/Oculus or whoever comes up with it, somebody probably will. How to monetize? I mean, it can be an app store, just like the PC or the desktop app stores, or I guess the
Think of a
the mobile.
monetizable thing.
20% of any e-commerce that occurs inside of it. And e-commerce can occur inside of it with payments, where I walk into a store, I look at something, I see prices on top of everything, I see consumer reviews, I'm using the Amazon app, and I'm inside the store, maybe I'm using the store's app, and then it's taking a piece of the transaction or a piece of the upsell of a transaction, and now there are marketing messages coming to me that it could be a cost per message, CPM. For advertising inside of my glasses.
What about from you guys?
In addition to
Ideas?
e-commerce?
Sam?
Oh, well, I think what would have made Google Glass useful is if there was some big demand for a hands-free piece of technology, right? Because that's effectively what it was, right? And I think it's some of the same issue with the watches, right? The Apple Watch is, what is the incremental thing it does for you, right? The phones are very functional.
I call them
provide-
unwearables, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, it didn't really do anything you couldn't do. And I think I had the same experience with Google Glass. What could it do that I couldn't do faster with my phone?
Took photos well. That was cool. Being able to take photos.
Yeah.
Real kind of without pulling out a device, but
So
when you
think
can
of a
figure it
think
out.
of
So
monetization.
the device has to, the augmented reality device, if it's going to be part of your ecosystem, has to make your experience better, right?
Sam, think of an idea. What would you monetize it?
You could give information about everyone. I mean, I could right now look out here and I could just know everyone who is single.
Oh, I'll give you an easy example of a monetization. So you could have, people walking down the street, right? And you're any one of the retailers around there, and you're trying to get someone to walk into your restaurant, and you use the profile of those people based on scoring the algorithms of the 50 people walking by, and you know which 3 people are more likely to want to eat Chinese food tonight because they had Mexican food the night before, or they're heavy Chinese food eaters, and you'd pop up and say, hey, go around the corner and save $2 and use your Bank of America card, and you get 20% off. And so it's context, it's GPS, it's easy. It's based on the behavior of the people around them, and it's basically, geo-based, and maybe it's easier to do than your phone because your phone's in your pocket, and it's not in your hand. And the advantage of being 24/7 on some glass is that you don't have to you don't have to physically. You have your phone out 127 times a day, but it's not in your face 16/7.
Right,
And
Carol,
there's a lot that can be done.
very quickly, because I'm going to get to
So we
questions.
see AR, I think 2 things need to happen. The first is lens technology. The issue, I'm a Google Glass user, and I use it for my vacation. So whether it's taking videos or photos and things like that, and then
You're the last
sharing
one
online.
using it.
Actually, there are a lot of users, but I think 2 things need to happen. One, the form factor. Instead of a small little field of view, the technology is actually in place right now for full screen glass. So it's going to look like you're wearing glasses, but cool glasses, and on both lenses versus a small projection lenses. I would have to predict, I think by the end of 2017, those glasses are going to be in the market at affordable prices, because I have seen technology back in the factories in China as well, and I believe Google is going that direction. And then number 2, the first application isn't going to be consumer application, it's going to be industrial application. And for industrial application to work, you need back-end database. So think about the workers on the factory line manufacturing your iPhone. To be able to do this well, hands-free and do manufacturing, you actually need to have the back end of an entire iPhone, components and chip all in the database. And so within that vertical, whether you're manufacturing a phone, whether you're manufacturing a car, where you have parts, the workers needs to be hands-free, but in a fixed environment. And so in a fixed environment with data set, that's where you can get paid application that's very useful. Think about medical surgeries as well. So that's where I think AR is going to come. It's in industrial, form factor needs to improve. VR is going to be consumer, which is what we talked about, the gaming experience, the entertainment experience, and the form factor is going to get even better with kind of hands-free without the tethered power.
It really has to. Okay, questions from the audience? Very quick questions. We've got about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
How much consideration do you put into the rise of voice-activated personal assistants, potentially replacing smartphones as a master device? Are you making, developments to adapt to that potential?
So, Carolyn, by the way, I am a crazy Amazon Echo user. I love my Amazon Echo and love Alexa. I'm really involved with Alexa right now, and I love it because it finally works, and nobody has made that work yet. Go ahead, Carolyn, why don't you answer?
I also use Alexa, Amazon Echo. I think it's a fantastic device. Our perspective, we have something called M, which is a digital assistant that we are developing right now, and it's using AI as well as humans to understand how to respond to basic requests and questions from the people that utilize Messenger, and we're hoping the learnings from that will translate into learnings for businesses so that they can use chatbots to more automate their services. So we're utilizing that. We think about voice for a variety of different places. For example, people that are visually impaired, which are about 267 million people globally, now using AI, literally they can listen to what's in a photo on Facebook in their news feed, utilizing the work that we've done in AI. So we're experimenting with a couple of different areas. We don't necessarily see it replacing a smartphone usage anytime in the near term. I'll turn it to you to see if you think anything different.
Yeah, I think voice is going to be the #1 single biggest application for AI, when you think about AI.
Yes.
And so we did not talk about this, but smart devices, the Internet of Things, and Alexa is one of it, is voice. So the first engagement is really in voice. We are very positive. It's an area that we actively invest in as a front-end interaction versus, text, video, and photos.
I think it's enormous. I think once you start using it right, and finally get it right, and
Yes.
you have people. When I keep talking about Alexa, a lot of people from Google and Apple keep calling me and saying we have better technology. I'm like, and they have a product that works, and you don't. So it's really try it. It's not very much money.
Yeah.
Get the Echo or the Dot, and you'll see why it's so. And all the skills. I have one that tells. There's one that you can. There's millions of skills. There's hundreds of skills now.
Yes.
And I have
How it
one
looks.
that's like goes. You say, give me a compliment. And it goes, you look good today. Like, and I don't know why I love it, but it's like.
You don't?
I do. But
I
it's
like using it to play Sunday morning jazz music.
Or just a joke. Tell me an idiotic joke.
Yeah.
It's just
Pretty
really
good
fascinating where it could
Works
go.
well.
Because you're a goat. Last question. One more question. Over here.
Yeah, this question for Andrew. What's your take on the using iBeacon technology to get more specific information from users in locations and as a platform to trigger actions in smartphones and such?
Sorry, I missed the first 3 words, which I think were the key part of the question.
iBeacon technology. and
iBeacon
low-energy
technology in stores. I think the jury is still out as to whether it's actually necessary to have such precise geolocation. And to me, it always comes back to how do you integrate that information into other things you're doing so that you can actually affect the buying behavior of what you're doing. So I think stores are experimenting with it, just as people are experimenting with geo. And if they can figure out how it actually drives traffic and drives behavior, it'll be incredibly powerful. But it's too early to tell.
Absolutely. Okay, last very quick question from each of you. You can't say your own company, but what do you right now think is the most exciting mobile app that you use that has some monetizable potential? Each of you. So,
Oh, you mean I got to go first?
yeah, you do.
Well, the obvious one is one we talked about, which is Snapchat. But I would say that I think the generic case of kind of retailer platforms are so underutilized given how much they know about their consumer.
Any particular one that's good?
Target, Walgreens, CVS, any major growing store, Walmart.
My favorite monetizable mobile app is Spot Hero, which lets you find parking. You drive around, it tells you park here,
Yes.
transact in the app.
Yeah, I like all the parking ones. Park Mobile, Park by Phone. They're fantastic. They're all, again, in the babified San Francisco. It's another thing that makes life much easier.
I'm not on Tinder, but I'm thinking that may be number 4 on my list.
Okay, all right, okay. You want to preface that by saying, all right.
I've been using Delectable lately to keep track of wine. Take a photo of a wine label, and it accesses the database.
And can you buy it?
Lets you rate, and you can buy, and it's a community of people, and you can follow one another and just keep track of
I
wine.
didn't know that one.
Well, in China, there are 35 million rides a day, so I have to go with Didi Taxi. It's a competitor to Uber. I think the whole transportation fabric is being revamped from just booking a ride to ultimately using the spare capacity to do transportation, logistics, and the likes. So I don't drive, so parking is not an issue.
Yeah.
I like to be chauffeured around.
We're having Jean Liu to our code conference in
Great.
a couple weeks.
Jean's great.
They have one thing that's fantastic. So you're drunk, you
That's right.
call it,
You
a
call a
person
driver with-
comes to you and drives you
Drives
home
your
in your car and then leaves your car there, so you don't do drunk driving. It's
That's
really
right.
Fantastic idea.
It's not allowed to drive when you're drunk in China, so you just
Well,
find
here
a driver
too.
to come.
But when
Crazy insight.
we have that incredible in common thing. But you know, when Google gets the totally autonomous self-driving car, you'll be able to text and drive as much as
Absolutely.
you want.
Lie down and drive and text.
I'm using Rent the Runway a lot. I'm renting clothes
Right on that mobile app.
right on the mobile app, and they're showing up like the next day, and it's fantastic.
Great.
Totally changing my shopping behavior.
All right, well, those are all great ones. Rent the Runway.
Rent the
the
Runway.
Runway.
This is a Rent the Runway dress.
Very nice. She's going to be sending it
I have
back
to
in
download
like a
that.
half an hour.
I am.
Okay.
FedEx address.
All right, and he totally rented this shirt.
Oh, absolutely.
No, not at all. But thank you so much for all of you. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you.